You're listening to Radio 97, and it's that time of the week. Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala, of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, with us along with her textbooks and all her information. She's here every Thursday to offer her legal expertise. She provides some general advice on the latest hot topics. She's got experience that spans more than a quarter of a century. Goodness, in the area of property and commercial law. She also prepares wills as part of estate planning and litigation. She's with us now. Morning, Despina.
Good morning, Wayne. Good morning, Brooke.
Good morning, Desi. Good morning, Wayno. All righty. So we're kicking off this morning with an excellent question from Mike. Thank you so much, Mike, for sending this in for Despina to answer. He wrote, what rights do people have when broken into whilst home?
Oh, this is a good one. We're hearing about this quite a bit.
Topic. Unfortunately, we've been seeing it more and more around the Gold Coast. What rights do people have when broken into whilst home? With the problems we have here on the Goldie at the moment, I think we would love to know what we can and can't do to protect ourselves.
Yes.
Excellent question, Despina. What do you think about that one there from Mike?
Great question, Mike. And I know we have had home invasions, particularly over the Christmas holiday period. They were quite rife. So it is a good question. What I want to say to the listeners out there first up is that I'm not a criminal lawyer. So what I want to say first of all is we're going to talk about it generally this morning, and I'm happy to do that. But if you have unfortunately been in a situation where there's been an assault or an intrusion has happened in your home, someone has come in and broken in and you've had this confrontation, right? And you've been, the victim of a situation like this, that you really need to get the specialty advice from a criminal lawyer. So I will say that up front, and that's important, because we only really give general commentary and advice on the show, and this is a big topic. But of course, I've gone back to, and I do remember studying criminal law at university many moons ago. So that was
quarter of a century ago, according to Wayne.
Well, okay, there you go.
Doesn't look it.
That's right. So the Queensland Criminal Code is still around as it was back then. But yes, we can talk about some general things. So you're going to hear things this morning, and some of the key words that people want to listen into and take away are things like reasonable necessity, fearing for one's safety, reasonable perception. Was it warranted? Was it lawful? Was it necessary? Was it provoked or unprovoked? And what was the intention? Which is always important when there's a criminal act involved, whether there was premeditated, so was it planned and intended to be carried out, or was it in the spur of the moment because of the events that arose and the circumstances that arose that caused you to act in a particular way without, thought beforehand. So premeditation, as we call it. So was it an unwilled act or a willed act, as we like to say in the legal world? So you're going to hear those words to try and answer Mike's question about what you can and cannot do. And the other thing I'll say after saying all of that, which is relevant, is it does depend. Right, and people generally don't like that. They want to generally have a black or white answer.
I want to know this.
I want to know.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's not how the law works. And we should all appreciate that at some level, because if you have been charged with an offence, you need to look at the facts and circumstances of what has happened, how it's come about, and there are relevant things that the court does look at in relation to criminal acts. And that's really important, because you don't want to be charged or have your situation looked at in the same way as if someone who pre-planned to murder someone, right? So a completely different situation to someone's come in, broken into your home, you've confronted them, right, in the middle of the night, completely different. You weren't expecting it. It's a surprise. What do I do?
Yeah.
So probably the next thing I want to say is, look, generally, yes, we have the defence, or we have self-defence available under the Queensland Criminal Code, and we have that available in other states and territories of Australia. So it's not unique to Queensland, of course. And the Criminal Code does allow for some use of force in self-defence, right? So that makes sense, because someone comes in and tries to attack you or attack someone else, right, who's next to you. Yeah, and we've talked about that last year a little bit with self-defense and the defense of provocation. We talked about that last year with the incident on Sovereign Islands. So you can, to a certain extent, use force in that situation in self-defense, but it's got to be considered to be reasonable and necessary.
Yep.
Yeah, reasonable and necessary.
So it's the amount of as well. So like the if someone comes at you with a, I don't know, with a knife, for example, is a gun appropriate?
Exactly. So if, as a homeowner, right, you do not have this automatic right to attack an intruder or burglar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm sure that, yes, if the police are listening out there, they'll be very happy that I said that, because I know that the police have advised Australian homeowners in the past to obviously, they were against you keeping weapons in the home. I know that. And if they've also advised people that, look, if someone does come in and break into your home, they don't want you to attack that person. They want you to actually call the police and get out of there. And that's their general advice, right? And that's all well and good. But look, yeah, you don't have this automatic right to attack an intruder. And you can't hit someone with a baseball bat, for example, or any other weapon just because they're standing in your kitchen, right? So, you know, you need to take, I suppose the level of force has to be proportionate to the circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay. So typical things, if someone attacks you with a knife, you can't get a gun, right, in retaliation. Not that you might have a gun, because you have to be licensed to hold a gun and a weapon of that kind. But if someone attacks you with a knife, can you use a baseball bat? So it depends on the type of weapon you're using to defend yourself or someone else, but it also is about perception. So if you perceive that someone's come into your home and they're attacking someone else, and you reasonably perceive that burglar, that they're in the process of almost killing that person, because you can see what's happening with the type and force of attack, then you have reasonable grounds to take steps to try and prevent that from occurring.
Yep.
So it's your perception of the situation at the time that is also very relevant, which can be subjective sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine, obviously, the sheer panic. And if you say being a parent and that is your teenage daughter or something, and maybe the person's back is to you and you don't even know what's going on, you can see how, like you said, it's got to be case-by-case evaluation with these things, because you can imagine the heat of the moment, you might go too far. And then I guess that is then debated by the judge at the court.
That's right. So there is a High Court case that talked about this very issue, and it was back in 1987, and it was Chekovich. And what it actually said in terms of, you know, how far can you take this, you know, use of force? When can it be deemed reasonably necessary? So what was said in this High Court case was this, that the question to be asked in the end is quite simple. It is whether the accused believed on reasonable grounds that it was necessary in self-defense to do what he did, okay? And if he had that belief and there were reasonable grounds for it, or if the jury, right, because you go to a jury trial, right, if they're charged, is left in reasonable doubt about the matter, because remember the onus, or the burden, I should say, is beyond a reasonable doubt for criminal charges, then he is entitled to an acquittal. Okay, and that was set by the High Court. So, you know, that's a real test to be applied in these situations. So, you know, the bottom line, if someone comes in your house in the middle of the night and wakes you up, you can't just shoot them or knock them over the head or stab them with a knife. It depends on the situation. What's happening in the moment? Are they attacking someone else? Are they nearly killing someone else? Are they using force? How do you perceive the situation? Right, because we do have self-defense there, right? And it can be used in certain situations. So, look, I hope that's answered Mike's question to a certain degree. And I think we just all have to be very careful. But remember, taking the words away of what is necessary, what is considered reasonable in the circumstances, what is considered warranted and justified, taking into account all the facts and circumstances at the time.
Yep, and of course that will vary depending on a whole stack of factors. So so each situation, of course, is different.
Well, and as I said before, is it an unwilled act or a willed act? Was there a conscious decision to go ahead and attack that person in that manner, or was it done immediately in the moment in self-defense and because they feared for their safety? and there were reasonable grounds for that fear that they had at the time. Yeah.
And I think preventative actions are always fantastic. Lock your doors, lock your windows.
Oh, of course.
Pretty
Do all those.
Yep,
Yes,
do
do
that
all
first.
of those things that are very, very good advice.
And hopefully we can stay away from those situations. Thank you so much, Despina, and again, Mike, for sending in that question. And coming up, speaking of questions, there's one question that Despina constantly gets. So she's going to share that in just a moment and answer it for everyone here on Talking Law.